everyone. Welcome to the 5-Beer Plan. I'm Brian, and this is the ongoing saga of an everyman's ale trail. In this episode, I recap a sunny brewfest experience, mash in on the latest homebrew project, conclude the conversation with Dominick Peri from Prosperity Brewers in Boca Raton, Florida, and review Midlife Crisis from Ten Wasp Brewing. But before we get this party started, here is this episode's burning question. What is your favorite red IPA? According to Untappd, mine comes from Auburn Brewing Company, which is sadly temporarily closed. Their offering Redline is a 6.8% ABV beer with 60 IBUs. The beer had a lot of aromatic citrus on the malty backbone. Bitter, piney, and amazing. As an aside, I hope this isn't the end of the line for this brewery. In this segment of Tales from the Trail, I retrace my steps at a Florida beer fest. This past March, I was fortunate enough to attend the Florida Craft Beer Festival. Organized by the Florida Brewers Guild, this festival officially kicks off Tampa Bay Beer Week, which is typically the first week in March. The fest was held at River Tower Park, just north of Tampa, on the banks of the Hillsborough River. It was a beautiful day. Blue sky with a few clouds and temperatures in the low 80s. The event started at 1 p.m. for VIPs, so I wanted to make sure that I arrived in plenty of time. This is especially important as well because I wasn't sure what the parking situation would be like. It looked like an open field, and all the online recommendations said to arrive early. Temporary bright orange fencing was set up around the festival grounds. I could see that the fest, a series of tents, tables, and stage, was literally set up in the park, winding in and out amidst live oak trees. And to top it off, like a beacon of hope to a thirsty traveler, the Sulphur Springs Water Tower, with its shining white profile, rose up over 200 feet into the pale blue sky. Pretty cool. As fate would have it, arriving 1.5 hours early meant there was plenty of parking. Good for me. This meant I could mill around and get an idea of what the fest might look like. There was no one in line, so I went up to the gate and asked if I could get my wristband and glass, but was told I had to wait. So I grabbed a brat from a local vendor who was just setting up, went down to the bank of the river, and began eating my lunch. And thus began my experience. Now, typically, I tend to script everything up, and I'm going to just do a little bit of stream of consciousness recollection of the beer fest. So, when I got down to the river, there were a couple gentlemen there that I started talking with, and it turned out that they were two brewers from McGuire's Irish Pub, located in Pensacola. It was pretty cool. We had a great conversation, talking about all sorts of things as we watched fish jumping in the river, and even a few manatee come swimming by, which they're always cool to see. About 30 minutes passed, and I happened to look over my shoulder and saw that there was now a line at the gate. Oh well. So I hopped into line, and I was probably 40 or 50 people back at this point. Not a big deal. 1 o'clock comes around, and they start to let us in, and we wind past again the water tower into the event venue. So one of the first places I went to was Aardwolf Brewing, where I talked to Lance. Aardwolf is one of my favorite breweries in Jacksonville. Their styles of beer were great, and they just do a really great job there. So another place that I stopped into Veterans United. And it was interesting as well because it seemed like the breweries were grouped a little bit regionally. So across from Aardwolf, Jacksonville, so Veterans United was also in that same area, so I chatted with them for a little bit. I also turned the corner and ran into podcast, and it was the Brew Babes. Very, very fun, very cool to chat with them. They just had started up in January of this year, so if you get a chance, check them out. Their tagline is, "Where beer meets bold conversations, listen, laugh, and learn." But there were so many breweries there. As you'll hear in my conversation with Dom, about 70% of the breweries that were there are ones that I never had heard of before, which is really cool for me because as much as I like certain breweries in Florida, it's always great to experience new places as well. So there were places such as Dees Brothers Brewing, Clearwater Brewing, Liquid Garage Brewing. You'll hear from me next time with Chef Steph and her boozy bakes. As I mentioned, Prosperity Brewing, Double Branch Artisanal Ales up in Wesley Chapel, Fiddy's, who's just getting started. Talked to Dustin for quite a while. Alga Beer Company. Talked with Rocketeer Beer. They're out of Miami, Florida. Talked with the folks at Tripping Animals, which was really cool. Another one of those breweries that I periodically will get beer from here in Ohio. There was Tarpon River Brewing. Ruby Beach Brewing Company. The Sassy Cider Chick was there as well. Hop State Brewing Company. Grace Note. Devine Brewing. Millennial Brewing Company. Again, just so many breweries that were there, and I had so many great conversations with people. I really liked, again, the way that it was laid out. I liked the fact that things were arranged a little bit more regionally. Gave me a chance to kind of chat with folks in the same area, get an idea of what they were doing in their neck of the woods. So as many of you know that have been listening to the podcast for a while, one of the things that I really like to do is to try as many different beers as I possibly can. And so this festival did afford me that opportunity. I think I had maybe 18 to 25, somewhere in that area, different tastes of beer. And again, this is over the course of 4 hours. And I've gotten smart in my old age, just drinking a couple of ounces instead of doing a full 4-ounce or 5-ounce pour. I should also mention, too, that one of my coworkers and good friends, Thomas, joined me for the Beer Fest. He lives locally there in Temple Terrace, which is just outside of Tampa. One of the things that he's invited me to is the Temple Terrace Beer Fest, which I've not yet had a chance to attend, but it's one that's definitely on my radar. So looking back at some of the beers that I did enjoy, so some of my favorite ones were Drowning Demons from Hop State, which was a double New England IPA. Oh, She's Juicy from Double Branch Brewing and Bites. Veterans United, their Helles Lager was pretty tasty. Hippie Chick was a pale ale from Liquid Garage Brewing Company. Oh, Electric Avenue. This was also a good one from Liquid Garage as well. That one was really tasty and just super crushable. Charlie Foxtrot was there as well. I interviewed them back in season 2. They just started brewing their own beer, which I'm pretty excited about. So that was cool to be able to taste their pale ale. Clearwater Brewing had something really crazy. It was a sour, a Berliner sour, and it was called their Blackberry Mojito Florida Vice beer. That one was pretty darn amazing and refreshing. Something totally unique and out of the ordinary. Rosenbach Brewing, they had a Doppelbock, which was also pretty amazing. Third Planet Brewing, they had an Imperial Stout. All in all, it just was a really nice festival. I met a lot of different people. I had some great conversations. And, the whole point of craft beer is to build community, to enjoy craft, to enjoy something that is unique, that has been just meticulously put together. And I felt this particular beer fest really exhibited that. Being that it was a summer beer fest and in Florida, certainly there were a lot more lagers and ales and IPAs that were being offered up, which again is kind of cool, something different. But boy, I tell you what, it was a great start to Tampa Bay Beer Week. I didn't get to experience as much of Tampa Bay Beer Week as I wanted to, but I did have a few opportunities to do so during the following days of the week. So if you happen to be in Florida or happen to want to go to Florida on vacation in March, go the first week in March. There will be so many opportunities for you to enjoy craft beer, meet people that are like-minded, and just enjoy what Florida craft beer has to offer. So I know this is a little bit disjointed, but it was a blast. So Florida Brewers Guild, thank you so much. It was a lot of fun, and I look forward to maybe getting down there again. Cheers! In this segment of Homebrew Hijinks, where I document my homebrew adventures. I mash in on the current homebrew project, the Sunny Session IPA. The goal of this beer was to have a mid to low 4% ABV Session IPA with a mild bitterness. This would be a pretty straightforward recipe, the grain bill consisting of 70% two-row, 18% crystal malt, 6% carapils for some body, and 6% barley flakes to help with mouthfeel. I also added an ounce of rice hulls to ensure that no clumping would occur. The total amount would weigh just shy of 1 3/4 pounds. I placed all the grain in my brew bag and mixed it around well with my hand. This would be used for a 60-minute mash. Using the water requirements calculated from Brewer's Friend, I began to heat 2 quarts of water in my pasta pot to a strike temperature of 169 degrees Fahrenheit. I also turned on my oven, which would help maintain my mash temperature for the 60 minutes. Once my instant read thermometer reached the target, I plunged my brew bag in the water and stirred it to ensure all the grain was wet. I checked the temperature again, and it was 148 degrees Fahrenheit. A little shy of my target of 152, but I would achieve this once my mash was in the oven. I put the lid on the pot and placed it in the oven. I checked every 15 minutes to make sure my temperature was consistent. It did eventually get to 152, by the way. In the meantime, I would heat up sparge water to 170 degrees Fahrenheit in a couple other pots. When the mash was complete, I began the process of rinsing the grain 2 cups at a time to extract all the sugary goodness from the grain. I let the water drain over the bag and also squeezed the bag periodically with one of my temperature-resistant brewer's gloves to make sure I wouldn't get burned. The goal was to have 1.5 gallons of wort. Once I achieved this volume, I took a pre-boil measurement and found it to be 10.28, which was right where I wanted to be. I began my cleanup from the mash as I turned up the temperature on the stove. So next episode, I start up the boil kettle. Now, it's time for Barstool Banter. In this episode, the sun goes down on my conversation with Dom from Prosperity Brewers in Boca Raton, Florida. With their 8th anniversary party now in the books, we turned our attention to contract brewing and how to stay agile in order to adapt to new ideas and methods in the industry. We also dive into details about the core beers that he took along to the Florida Craft Beer Fest and what his vision of beer and brewing has been since the beginning. As you'll hear, the East Side has a nice smattering of breweries in Palm Beach County. If you happen to find yourself on the Atlantic coast for vacation or business, be sure to swing in and enjoy one of their handcrafted beers. We don't often get to the east side of Florida. The west side of the state, basically from Clearwater down, I know most of the breweries that are there, so I definitely have an idea in my head to try to do things on the east side a bit.
I got a couple of things to tell you. Number one, definitely come to the east side. The brewery density on this side is a lot less than it is. You know, if you look at any of the materials that you find out there on social media that talk about beer in different states, there's no doubt that Cigar City is the OG of Florida. Probably the most well recognized. Maybe Funky Buddha being a very respectful second, right? Cigar City's been around a long time. And they also sprinkled the infield when they sold. So they not only helped a lot of brewers and entrepreneurs get into business because they led the charge, but they also helped a lot of people financially after they made some money on their business. And they literally are one of the most well-respected beer families in the state. But what I was going to say is I have a daughter who goes to school in Tampa at USF, and she lives up in Temple Terrace near the
Yeah.
campus. And then I have another daughter and lives in downtown St. Pete, and she lives right next to Tropicana Field. Yeah, so I get to the West Coast a lot more often these days, and I do have 3 daughters. I have a third who lives up in Atlanta, and the only reason I mention that is because the brewery that I do my contract brewing with is 3 Daughters Brewing in St. Pete.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Mike, who owns the place, is a great guy and a good friend of mine, and I think part of the reason we clicked is because we both do have 3 daughters, and we know what that means as a dad. You know, we do military and first responder discounts any day of the week. We do teachers, discount for teachers as well. We do happy hour. We never did happy hour. I was always morally opposed to happy hour. Not because of the reasons they do it in, Massachusetts, because of the blue light laws and you're not allowed to have a happy hour. I was just like, hey, our beer is not here to be discounted. We make a product and, this is a fair price for it and you should be able to pay a fair price. But, you know, I'm in competition with every bar and restaurant in town, every pizza shop that has a beer license that can literally sell
Yeah.
a can of beer. So
Mm.
this is the first year that we started doing it. We started doing it in December. We offer $2 off a beer. So that $8 beer is now $6. And it needed to happen. And maybe I should have done it a year or two ago, but it's in place now.
Well, going back to what you were saying, Dom, about the beer industry, I think no longer can the mediocre and poorly executed breweries be in business much anymore because there's so many more breweries that brew such great beers that I think that the typical craft consumer isn't going to stand for a mediocre beer, no matter how good the environment necessarily is.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think putting a timestamp on it that in the past they would, but now they
Mm,
won't,
yeah,
really finishes the statement I made earlier in a
yeah.
better way. I
Eh,
appreciate that. We started a mug club recently. Going to do it for a long time, and I never did. And that brewery that I was at in Idaho, because it was a library formerly, the mail slots were where your mug lived. So when
Oh,
you walked up
cool.
to the bar, it was rebuilt or reconceived to accommodate the size of a mug, and everybody had a mug. We did it last year, and we hung a dog tag off of the mug. So it had a little jingle to it, and it gave a little audible acknowledgement in addition to the visual. You're drinking out of a pint glass. This guy's drinking out of a mug. So that worked out well. And when you ring up the beer for the mug club member, it's a different button than the regular. So we could track how many mugs we fill. It's limited to 100 mugs or 100 members. Last year we sold 82. This year we're right at mid 80s. I think we're at 84, 85. And, we're 3 months into it with Jan, Feb, March. So we'll
Sure.
probably sell the rest of them before the end of the year. And that's a critical piece. I think in the past, people did it to sort of form the camaraderie and the feeling of being part of the brewery and being part of the community. And it worked out great. I guess it just speaks to the fact that you have to continually not reinvent yourself, but be on the front end of promotions and marketing and making it exciting for your customers.
And you've got to be agile too, because the industry and desires and needs and wants in the community, those are changing all the time. So you have to have that flexibility and say, okay, you know what? I still like it this other way, but we might be able to shift just a little bit and bring a few more people into the brewery, which is
Yeah.
obviously the important part. So the east side of the state, I really haven't done much. A little bit in Jacksonville area, but when I went to the Craft Brewers Fest, your brewery wasn't even on my radar, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fair.
in fact, there
That's
were
what we do.
probably 70% of the breweries that were there weren't on my radar. So that was a really cool, opportunity for me because you had your breweries from Miami, breweries from, the Boca area, breweries from all over the place.
So just let me frame this up. Miami is a big city. It's a legitimate city. Boca Raton is a town. Fort Lauderdale is a big town, but it's not a city. So we're all the greater Miami area from looking at the map,
Yeah.
of the US. Miami is probably 50 miles away. It's at least an hour drive. So down south, you have Miami. You go north, you have Fort Lauderdale. And then in between Fort Lauderdale and West Palm Beach, you have Boca Raton. So I'm a 30-minute drive from West Palm or Fort Lauderdale, but an hour drive to Miami. I remember when I got my brewing license, I was the sixth brewery licensed in Palm Beach County, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
At one point, we were up to about 17 or 18 in Palm Beach County. And by the way, Boca Raton is the southernmost town in Palm Beach County. So Palm Beach is a 47 or 48-mile long county that runs all the way up to the city of Jupiter. And obviously, we're along the Atlantic Ocean, so it's
Yeah.
all well populated. But there's two breweries in Boca. There was two others. One didn't survive, and one's a brew pub, doesn't
Mm,
distribute. It's a restaurant with a brewing license. Delray Beach, the town north of us, there's one. Boynton Beach, there's two. Lake Worth, there isn't any. West Palm Beach, there's one or two. So it's not a very densely populated. You go to Fort Lauderdale, there's 5 or 6 breweries. Go to Pompano Beach, the town between us and Fort Lauderdale, there's two, maybe three. And then you group Miami as a city overall, there's probably 20 breweries down there. But when I say there's 20 breweries, you couldn't hit them all in one day because it's not like Asheville. They're not
right. Right.
concentrated. They're all over the place. not with their brewing, but with their geography.
Mm-hmm.
It could take you 35, 40 minutes to get from one to the other because it is a big city. The beers that I had available are my core beers that we've been making since we started. I have my intracoastal blonde ale. It's a little play on words there. The waterway that runs along the ocean is the intracoastal
Yep.
waterway. So we make a Kolsch style blonde ale. So we call it intracoastal. Funny story. I sat in so many brand launch meetings when I worked for the wine and spirits distributor. And I said, if I'm ever fortunate enough to own my own brand, the thing I'm never going to do is create a brand with a tongue twister name and difficult to pronounce. And sure enough, it was the first one that I did. But I had a vision of every restaurant and bar that's on the Intracoastal Waterway from Miami to Jacksonville serving my beer. Work in progress. The Intracoastal Blonde Ale is a 4.5% Kolsch style blonde ale. It's a little bit of a contradiction because a Kolsch is a lager and blonde ale is obviously not, but it's that style and it works well. It's a great beer for any day of the year in Florida. Refreshing, low alcohol, crisp. The Clutch Plate IPA is a traditional American IPA with Columbus and Mosaic, 7%. It's got a little bit of color in it that gives it a little honey or golden color. Even though it's 7%, it sort of drinks like a Founders in flavor
All
profile,
right.
not with the alcohol percentage. I tell everybody, when you do a staff training for a new bartender that's working for you or for staff of restaurants that are going to be serving your beer, you could give them any descriptive words you want. But if you can compare that beer to another beer that they might be familiar with for explanation to a client. So I just tell everybody the Kolsch is our lightest beer, but it's not a light beer. It sort of drinks like a Stella.
All
It's light,
right. All right.
all the other beers we make, but not light compared to Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors, Corona, etc. So I had those available. I had my 1925 pineapple Kolsch available. Last year, the city of Boca was incorporated for 100 years. They were founded in 1925. So in 2025, it was the centennial. And they tapped me to make their centennial beer. So all wounds from the city were healed. And we put some pineapple juice from a 55-gallon drum of pineapple juice into the beer, into the Kolsch. And then I think I might have had my simpatico Mexican style lager in a white can. I have the can images, regardless of whether we're pouring from draft or from a can. I always try and bring draft to a beer festival,
Yeah.
but we always have the can images because it's a better graphic.
Yes.
Remember the graphic. That's the hard thing when you first start out as a new brewery. If you're not canning anything, you don't have an image unless you design a quote unquote label
Yeah.
to present. So that
Yeah.
helps people remember what they're drinking, what they liked, and et cetera, et cetera.
So
Yeah.
going back to the logo, so that that's another thing I really like because I think it's really simple and effective, and it gives me like the Florida vibe. So is that kind of what the logo represents to you as a brewery?
Yeah, it was funny because, and I know we're on a podcast and people won't be able to see us, but when I hold up the back of my business card, it's got the pint glass and the palm trees.
Yep.
And that was our logo for 7 years. It's just black and white or white on black reverse image. And it says Prosperity Brewers, Boca Raton. It's a pint glass and palm trees. It represents Florida. It represents what we do. I think everybody universally thinks of palm trees as a relaxing vacation type of environment.
Yeah.
I don't think people see palm trees and think about hurricanes. Uh, and have a pint under the palms. Affectionately, we call that logo the Pint and Palms, as if it was an English pub, like the Fox and Hound or the
Yeah.
Lion and Eagle. But about 2 years ago, I thought it needed a refresh, so we incorporated the circle with the color splash.
Yes, I think I have one of your coasters that I picked up at the
Yeah,
beer
yeah.
fest.
And that, gradient color splash from brown to orange to yellow to blue, different shades of blue on the bottom. In addition to adding color to our logo to make it a little bit more noticeable, to make it stand out, to give it more personality. It's the sun and the ocean. I don't know if you picked up on it, but
I
it's the
Yeah.
sky and the water, and it's that logo screams to me 1970s, Ocean Pacific, Southern California, maybe Cocoa Beach,
Yeah.
Ron John Surf Shop if we want to apply it to the East Coast.
Yep. Yep.
But that's what it's about. And it's about good vibes. It's about casual environment, making friends, having conversation. It's not about alcohol or getting drunk. It's the opposite of that.
Yeah. So do you have a core rotation of beers on tap, or are they constantly changing?
When we have a brewer in-house, we're constantly brewing new stuff. That was
Okay.
the model that we were working on when we built the brewery. We have a 3.5 barrel brew house, and we have three-barrel fermenters, and we have 3 7-barrel fermenters. So we can double batch anything we want, but we could also split that batch in half. From an efficiency perspective, we make 7 barrels of our brown ale. Before we keg it, we'll keg half of the brown ale, and then we'll treat the remaining with raspberry puree, and we call that jelly roll.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. We'll make a 7-barrel batch of sour base, so we'll make sour beers, and almost always sours are fruited these days. It'd
Yep.
be rare to find a barrel-aged sour that's not fruited, although there's a lot of places that are doing a great job of it, but I don't think it's that appealing to the masses, right? I love it. Rare Barrel in Berkeley does an amazing job at it. There was a place in Pompano called Odd Breed, and it was
Mm.
all cask aged, wild fermentation, amazing quality stuff. But when we do our sours, we'll make a 7-barrel batch. Half of it will be treated with tangerine puree. The other half will be treated with a different puree. Maybe it's blueberry this week, etc. The tangerine is our staple. So if we have a second sour option available on our tap list, it's going to be tangerine and then something else.
That
We've
sounds great.
done key lime. We've done cherry. The cherry became really popular. It was an 8% sour. It was an imperial cherry, which really would
Sneak up
knock
on you.
knock your boots off. Especially because if you think about the sour beer drinker, it's usually female, or it's usually somebody who's not a fan of traditional beers, and they're not looking for high alcohol. But when they see cherry, hey, let me try it, and then
Right.
catches up to you. We also have variations that we're now proliferating. Every year for our anniversary party, we would do a keg treatment on our core beers. We would do a mango habanero version of our Clutch Plate IPA. We would do a coconut infused treatment to our keg for our hazy IPA. And for the Kolsch, we would do a mango guava because we would call it Tropi Kolsch instead of tropical. Um, I have a guy who does amazing treatments in cellaring. So we've expanded that program now, and he makes a double dry hopped Clutch Plate, and we just call it double clutch, in addition to the mango habanero. And now the pineapple Kolsch is its own brand, right? Because it's the
Yeah.
1925. And then we have a bunch of other stuff that we do here and there. It just comes through. We're playing with different hop varieties on our IPAs. We had a Stormlight, which was a German style lager. We had a Czech Pilsner. As the Pilsners and lagers become more popular over the past 2 years,
Yeah.
we'll focus on making lighter style beers. The challenge with them is that they have to spend an extra 7 or 14 or 21 days lagering before you can keg them. That's the same phenomenon as red wine being barrel aged at a winery. So, you grew the grapes all season long, you harvest them, you turn them into wine, and now they got to sit for 18 or 24 months before you can sell them. But you
Yeah.
still have to pay for the cork and the glass and the label.
Right.
So, that represents a particular challenge for inventory turnover. But it's fun. And it's fun to hear what people remembered from their previous visit and what they liked and what they were looking for.
Yeah.
I think the best compliment that I enjoy receiving is, other than the beer's delicious and your staff is friendly, is that I love coming to Prosperity because I always meet nice people. That to me is a point of pride, and I appreciate that because, I created that environment with help from a lot of different people and a lot of different local businesses, but something that I could sort of hang my hat on. Come to Prosperity, you won't have a bad time.
We know we're almost out of time here, but I have one last fun question that I ask everybody that I interview. If you were a beer, what style would you be and why?
Ah, that's an interesting one. I love IPAs. I'm still on the IPA kick. I am 10 years older than when I started this project. I do drink less alcohol, period, and I do drink less IPAs than I did, but I love IPAs and I love West Coast IPAs. One of the beers that we've made at the brewery a couple of times and that I enjoy drinking at other breweries is Saison. Little lesser known. I like it because it's probably going to be different in every brewery. Yeah, you're going to get that sort of Belgian yeasty flavor out of a Saison, but I think stylistically, it's a broad category. I think it's ironic because they don't sell well at my place. And I don't think they light the world on fire anywhere because you don't see them a lot.
Yeah.
And if they did sell well and they were a profitable item, I think you'd see them more. So without trying to reach for the most obscure style and be cooler than the guy next to me, I've always enjoyed it. But I think that those alternative styles like Saison are allowing the brewer to work outside the box and really put some creative input into what he wants to deliver. Because nobody can say, oh, this is a great Saison, but it should have been this. Or your Saison needs to have more salt, more pepper, more spice, whatever you want to pull off the spice rack that the brewers use, whether it's different yeasts or different hops, whether it's boil hops or dry hopping, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say that Saison's a good one.
I like that answer a lot, and I like the explanation behind it. I also love a good saison. I think it's an underrated beer style, honestly.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
well, I really again appreciate you being on the show today. It's been great to get to know Prosperity Brewers a little bit more, getting to know you a little bit more. I sure wish I could be there for your April 17th party
Uh,
because that sounds like a lot of fun.
I appreciate that. I thank you. I'll tell you to check out the Instagram to see some of the fun photos. But I will give you one parting tip. What I consider one of the best beer festivals in South Florida is in Jupiter, the Jupiter Craft Beer Festival. It might even be called the Jupiter Craft Brewers Festival. It's always the last Saturday of January. There's usually about 2,000 people there, which is
Wow.
crazy because the Tampa Beer Fest that we were at together, there was 600 people. So it's packed. It's well attended. There's a lot of breweries. It's a well run, well thought out event, and you're going to get a ton of breweries.
Hey,
Have a
thanks
great day.
again. Enjoy your
Thank you.
party, and we'll talk soon.
Cheers.
Last call.
It's nearly time to wrap things up, but first, one more for the road. This episode, I'm drinking Midlife Crisis from Ten Wasp Brewing. From the brewer, Mosaic, Simcoe, and Columbus Cryo Hops. Without further delay, so this is a 7.7% ABV red IPA that came directly from the brewery, courtesy of owners Jacob and Diana. As you heard about when I interviewed them, I'm crazy about their beer. It is so amazing. They're doing such a great job there in Sumner, Iowa. So I poured this out into a pint glass, and just like Jacob's other beers, it pours crystal clear. It's a nice amber color, but boy, I can see right through it. It had a little bit of a head that kind of maintains a little bit around the edge, but it dissipated pretty quickly. So on the nose, I love the aroma on this already. I'm getting a lot of citrus in here, but I'm also getting a little bit of pininess as well. First sip impression. Yes, this is a great beer. It has a malty backbone, of course. I'd say it's light to medium bodied. It is super sessionable at 7.7. So they sent me one of these, I think it's 25 ounce cans, basically a pint and a half. And I could see myself just crushing on this in a very fast fashion. It is just that good. So it has a mild amount of bitterness. It's not overly so. It's probably a little bit more on the earthy side of things. Mosaic is one of those hops that can impart, big tropical notes, or it can come across also as a little bit more earthy. And I feel like maybe that's what's going on here with the Mosaic in this. It's a little bit more of an earthy vibe. If I didn't say so already, it has a mild bitterness. In fact, I'd say it's probably in the teens, if not maybe lower. For an IPA, I was thinking I was going to experience maybe a little bit more bitterness on this, but it's not. It's super smooth. It is just so doggone delicious. So I know that not many people that listen to my show have the opportunity to get to Iowa and enjoy Iowa beer. But if you're one of the few, definitely get yourself to Sumner, Iowa. They're making some amazing beer over there. And they're doing some great things in the community as well, which I've documented quite well last season. So, overall, this beer is pretty darn amazing. I'm going to give this one a high 4 tasters out of 5 on the flight board. Cheers, Ten Wasp Brewing, and thanks again to my special friends, Jacob and Diana. You guys are the best. I'm always looking for new craft beverages to review. So if you've got one from your favorite local craft brewery, meadery, or cidery you'd like me to drink and describe, reach out and let me know. That's all for this episode of the 5 Beer Plan. With so many podcasts out there, thanks for choosing to listen to mine. Join me next time as I fire up the mass shift drive for another trip back in time, continue the brewing process in the next homebrew project, talk about boozy bakes in a very interesting interview, and review another beer. Remember to hit the subscribe button on your preferred podcast platform to be notified of new episodes. Follow me on Instagram as well, 5 Beer Plan 2022, to see what is happening on my personal ale trail. I'd love to hear from you, and there are several ways you may do so. Leave a comment for this episode on Spotify, direct message me on Instagram, or email me directly, 5beerplan@frontier.com. Be sure to support your local breweries, choose your beers wisely, and drink them responsibly. Until next time, keep walking your ale trail, and stay thirsty, my friends.